All right, so now let's recap week 8. So week 7 and 8 were a bit of a bundle. They were in the general area of philosophy of mind. So in week 7, of course, we covered the idea that mind and body might be distinct substances, and if so, how might these distinct substances interact? This sort of brings up the what's called the mind-body problem, which has sort of vexed philosophy of mind since the time of Descartes in the 17th century or the whatever it was. And we saw how that problem sort of arises in the correspondence between Rene Descartes and Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia. Now, in the 20th century and the 21st century, philosophy of mind is largely physicalist. That is to say, most philosophers of mind take it that there is not a distinct mental substance and that all of the things that we refer to with mental vocabulary, beliefs, desires, things of that nature, are, they are at bottom physical things. So this is physicalism. Physicalism, as I say in the presentation, is a type of monism, which is to be contrasted with dualism. The Cartesian position, that is the position of Rene Descartes, where he says that mind and body are distinct things, this is a dualist position because it says there are two types of substance in the universe. Whereas physicalism is a monist position because it says there is one type of substance in the universe. So physicalism is then burdens itself with the task of explaining how all of these putatively mental phenomena are explicable in purely physical terms. And so this is the project that is at issue. So in the chapter lecture, we talk about this mental causation argument. The idea is that mental causation is something that we have no proof for or that doesn't make sense given the great success of the explanatory power of merely physical causal explanations. If we want to try and fit a different type of causation in there, a mental causation in there, all the ways of trying to do it seem to be no good, right? So they either lead to a problematic overdetermination where we have too many causes, leads to this sort of weird parallel or merging causal chains, which we have no reason to believe in, or these mixed causal chains, which sort of go between physical and mental events, again, which we have no apparent reason to believe in. There is no precedent for them outside of the mental phenomena that we're targeting, and so if there is no precedent outside for causal explanations featuring mental or non-physical steps, then we have no special reason, according to this argument, for thinking that there are non-physical steps in talking about the mind and explanations of desires and beliefs and that kind of thing. Now, what has stood as the largest outstanding problem for these physicalist views is how to explain consciousness. That is, when in philosophy they're talking about phenomenal consciousness, that is experience. So we walk around all day, we register all types of information, we behave on the basis of that information. All of that we can probably explain with advanced functional neurobiology. But that in of itself doesn't seem to explain why, when I'm taking in information about, say, the color of this cup, I see it, and then it has, this green color here, and then I experience it as having a different color here. I experience it having this particular feel when I touch it. It has a weight because of the contents of it, so on and so forth. Why do I feel all of that information? Why can't I just be sort of like a computer and register it and act on the basis of my measurements, right? The idea is that if we were truly purely physical, according to these arguments, then this sort of thing we wouldn't have these experiences, this what it's likeness, right? So this what it's like idea comes from the Nagel article that you read, What It's Like to Be a Bat. And both it and the Chalmers zombie argument are sort of pointing to the same thing. The idea that a purely sort of third-person physical scientific explanation of the facts in the universe will leave out these facts about consciousness. When I say leave it out, in Chalmers' case, he's saying we can imagine a possible world in which the total list of physical facts is there. It's identical to the world that we have. And yet there are missing facts. Those missing facts are facts about consciousness, right? So there could be a creature exactly like me who is sitting here, he's talking to you, he's drinking some water, thinks that the water is too warm, so he wants to go put ice in it, so on and so forth. And yet there's nothing it's like to be that creature. There's nothing going on inside, right? When he says that it's too warm and he wants to put ice in it, that creature is not feeling the warmth of the water. He's just sort of registering it, right? So Chalmers says that physicalism, as far as physicalism is concerned, it is possible, it is conceivable. So it is possible because it's conceivable that there should be such a world which is physically identical to ours, but not experientially or mentally identical to ours. Given that that's the case, given that this possibility exists, then facts about consciousness are logically distinct from facts about physical stuff. They don't follow directly. And so there is some kind of thing that stands unexplained. And there are a lot of different arguments that work like this. So as I said, the what is it like to be a bat argument does the same thing. We could have a full physical explanation about how bat brains work, about bat ecology, so on and so forth. Someone armed with all that information still couldn't tell you what it feels like to be a bat, right? There's another argument in the textbook. It's about Frank Jackson and What Mary Didn't Know. So What Mary Didn't Know is a very famous thought experiment from Frank Jackson, where he imagines a perceptual psychologist who is an expert in color science, the titular Mary. Mary grew up and learned all that she knows in a perfectly black and white room, and we sort of stipulate that the clothes she wears are black and white, and that there's, I don't know, she's wearing white gloves. We make it, we create the argument in such a way so that she never ever perceives any colors other than black and white, right? So she grows up in this weird room. And she learns all about perceptual psychology and the perception of color. She is the foremost expert. She knows literally everything that can be known about light reflectance and rods and cones and all that kind of stuff. So the idea is that she knows everything in this third-person physical way possible about color perception. The question is that when she leaves her room for the first time and she goes outside and she sees on the ground, a red flower or a brightly colored bird, does she learn something new, right? And what is that thing if she does learn something new? What is it? So she sees red, or she sees a red flower, she sees a blue bird. Does she learn, oh, that's what blue looks like? Is that's what blue looks like a new fact that she learns? If it is, then since we've stipulated that she knows all of the physical sort of scientific facts, then this fact, oh, that's what blue looks like, has to be a non-physical fact, right? So that's the very basic version of this what Mary Didn't Know argument. And it is, the subsequent ensuing literature is incredibly complicated, right? It's very technical because, this idea about different types of experience and what color science actually is and says all comes into it. But you can still evaluate the basic argument and think to yourself, well, do we learn something new when we have an experience of something for the first time for which we have all of like the descriptive book knowledge of it, right? And that's not the best way to put it, but it kind of gets the point across. If this sort of piques your interest, you really should go read that argument in the textbook about Frank Jackson's Mary the Color Scientist. I can't remember. I don't have the book with me at the moment, so you'll find it. It's in the Philosophy of Mind section. And it goes along very well with the Chalmers zombie argument and the Nagel what it's like to be a bad argument. So again, the sort of high-level review here is physicalism attempts to show that mental explanations, that is, explanations in terms of non-physical objects, are neither necessary nor even really make sense and are not needed. But then, sort of pushing back against that is this idea that a purely physical explanation of the universe can't give us an explanation of one of the things that we really want an explanation for, namely sort of phenomenal consciousness, experience. Okay? So hopefully that was helpful, and I do again urge you to go read that other section in the textbook.